How do you do? We're about to unfold the story of Frankenstein.
A tale that sent my blood into icy creeps. A monster created from cadavers out of rifled graves.
My purpose was to write a moral lesson. The punishment that befell a mortal man who dared to emulate God. Would you like to hear what happened after that?
Well, we warned you.
All right, so my next thought was, okay, so she says, I lived principally in the country as a girl. It's interesting to think how she refers to herself throughout this introduction, because, or everything she says in this introduction, a lot of it seems to either just be made up or a lie or else she's trying, and some of it is definitely this. She's trying to be, there's a sort of a modesty.
I was going to say.
That's expected of a woman, and that.
She sometimes sort of, not necessarily sells herself short, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, the humility, the humbleness is laid on a little thick. But
yeah.
It's
well,
probably
case,
because of the era in which it was written.
Right. And in this case, to say I lived principally in the country as a girl, it's entirely possible that's how she thought of her life. But I think it's easier for us to think of it nowadays as she was the girl who had Samuel Coleridge over,
right?
For dinner.
She did spend a lot of her youth in Scotland, in rural Scotland.
Yes,
she was sent away.
When you say a lot, she spent less than 2 years there. She spent a couple of, there's like 2 8-month periods over a couple of years.
All right, well, not a lot, but she spent considerable time there.
But that's the thing. Is that a lot? I mean, to her, I think it was a very formative.
It seemed like
formative time for her.
Let me say this. I was just talking to Don, and I was saying that the first 20 years of my life seemed to take forever. And the last 30 some have just rocketed past. So I think those early experiences, those formative years, they do make a deep impression. So in her mind, she spent a lot of time in rural Scotland.
Yes. And I was reading a little bit and watching little lectures on YouTube a little bit about this topic. And one way to say this, at least, is Mary's father, William, remarries after a decent interval after Mary's mother dies. He marries somebody or other, Claremont. I can't even remember her name now. But,
that's...
But they have a daughter named Claire Claremont, which we'll talk about later.
Which is actually not her real name, but...
Oh, good point. Yeah, she went by Clara Claremont, and I can't remember what her actual name is.
Jane something or other, I think.
Yeah, but they don't get along. Mary and her stepmother don't get along
well, not at all.
To the point where her stepmother was like teaching the children French, and Mary was not taught French. Whatever. She was just excluded like a fairy tale, basically.
Yeah,
at some
typical wicked stepmother.
Kinda,
yeah.
And at some point, William gets contacted by someone he doesn't know, a friend of an associate, who says, I'm just a really big fan. This is way I understand it anyway. I'm a really big fan of your work. If you need anything from me, just let me know. I'm a wealthy guy out in rural Scotland, but I just think you're a great guy. And William responds back, can you take my daughter?
Yeah.
and when I hear that setup to the story, it seems like, well, this is where great tragedy takes place. This is where it gets dark, for Mary. Yeah. But instead, she looks back on this as one of the greatest times she's ever had. She so loves living with the Baxters, and she even mentions Isabel Baxter later in this introduction.
Right.
She calls her. What the hell does she call her?
Well, she's usually cagey about naming anybody by name.
I like that she calls Shelley. I think that's funny.
Yeah.
Because her name was Shelley by that point.
Yeah.
But anyways, okay, so what she ends up saying is this was her audience that she wrote for. She would write little stories. Mm-hmm. When she was, I guess, 12, I think. Maybe a little older, 13, 14.
She was in her early teens, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what she chooses to say about herself, that she lived principally in the country as a girl. It seems like the Godwin home wasn't right downtown, but it was, she was in the city.
Yeah, it was I think it was, outskirts of London or something like that, from what I understand.
And I just love the way she describes this. In the summer of 1816, we visited Switzerland and became the neighbors of Lord Byron. Like this happened by mistake.
Yeah, you just, whoops. Hey, hey, buddy, how are you?
Hey, are you Lord Byron?
I got all your albums.
and the reality is a little weird. And I guess maybe sort of sad.
By 31, she's a respectable citizen. She's a published author and mother. Yeah, she downplays a lot of that sort of the free love they espoused, the drug use, the iconoclasm. By that point in her life, she's trying to put that all behind her. So a lot of it is whitewashed over in her introduction.
Right.
And in the way she re-edited the book.
I look forward to talking about that as we go on. Yes, absolutely. And so
because the truth of it is much more complicated than, oh, hey, look, it's Lord Byron.
It's Lord Byron. Yeah, Lord Byron by that point is a celebrity that is being pursued by Claire Clairmont, Mary's, I want to say, half sister.
Yes.
Because Claire Clairmont's father is William Godwin.
It was William Godwin. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're half.
Making sure I got that right, because there's also stepsisters.
Yeah, but they really don't factor in much.
No.
The story. Claire is the only one that has any real significance to the tale.
Right. Well, great significance here. Absolutely. She's there. Yeah.
She's there, but she's
when it all goes down.
But Mary doesn't mention her being there, does she? I thought she skips over it. And I think we know from John Polidori's journal, the story of how the book was conceived, we know primarily from Mary's telling in this introduction and John Polidori's journal, because he journaled it while he was there. So there are discrepancies between the two, and you can chalk some of it down to, people remember things differently, I'm sure. But some of it is Mary trying to sort of whitewash over some of the warts that existed.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I would say. I mean, she just tries to pretend like it wasn't important, and maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't. Maybe the scandal appeals to me now in a TMZ sort of sense in sitting here talking about it in 2021. But Claire pursues Byron. She's enamored of him.
Oh, she's like a groupie.
And I found it kind of interesting when I look back. I know that, there's this Villa Diodati that we're going to talk about, this confluence where everything comes together, and which is what confluence means. Bill. But a lot of people are going to meet a tragic end very quickly over a very short period of time.
It happens. And I mean, Mary herself was only 53 when she died.
She lived to ripe old age of 53. And I thought, well, I'll look up and see when everyone died, and kind of expected Claire Clairmont to be somebody who was going to last, just a year and maybe commit suicide, as was the custom back then. Yeah. She lived to be like 70 something.
She outlived everybody.
But Byron was really on the record as not liking Claire much at all.
Didn't want much to do with her, no.
But that's why they're there. That's why this happens, is because Claire.
They were traveling through Italy and Europe. And Claire sort of directed their path to intersect with Byron's.
And Percy had an attraction to Byron as well. I don't want to say that.
Yeah. Percy was. They were BFFs, I think, for a while.
Yeah, I think so. And so they became neighbors of Lord Byron. And then she writes here, but it proved a wet, ungenial summer, and incessant rain often confined us for days to the house.
Yeah.
So I also like that sort of downplaying of it, like a real rainy.
It was a major meteorological event, and she's it rained all the time.
A well-documented major meteorological event of immense magnitude. So there was
it was a global event.
It was global.
It was felt here. Even.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say is I have a list of things I found it called. It was called The Year Without a Summer.
Yep.
The Blood Red Summer. The Summer That Never Was.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
the poverty year.
Oh,
I don't know.
Okay.
And then in
Well, I
America,
suppose crops and things failed as a result. So yeah.
sure, absolutely. In America, of course, we came up with, then this is back in 1816. In America, they called it 1800 and froze to death. I just love,
Yeah, you know,
that's kind of an
I've got-
American
I've
way
got
of
a
putting that.
T-shirt that says that. So
1800. That is kind of a,
yeah.
do you remember the I survived the tornado of like 1978 t-shirts, or
Oh,
was
yeah.
that only something out in my neck of the woods?
No, I saw them. Yeah,
I don't know. Was it 78? It was around that time, maybe 81. I don't know.
that was the late 70s, I think.
So yes, this major meteorological event that I think we've probably referred to on the podcast. There's a
Mhm.
volcano
Volcano.
in Indonesia, then called something or other, maybe the Dutch Indies or something like that.
It was something like that. But
And
yeah, it was like one of the biggest volcanic eruptions in modern history.
it erupted for months.
Yeah,
I can't remember. I don't
spewed-
have. Yeah, I don't have notes. Is it 4 months? It spewed ash
it
all over the
spewed
place.
ash miles into the air, and of course, then that scatters over the globe. Basically, I mean,
Yeah,
if it went from Indonesia to America, it got around.
it's just astonishing to me to think of something of that much historical significance, like that could happen today. Maybe that's happening right now, and we would learn about it after the fact. It's like someone saying that we could have a pandemic and we're going to be all stuck inside for over a year trying, like,
Yeah.
you don't, you know what history is, but I guess maybe we've just lived in such a calm period here in America, here in Minnesota,
up till now. Yeah,
that history seemed like something that happened to other
There's
people.
other places. Yeah.
So this happened to them, and this is the way she describes it: a wet, ungenial summer.
Hmm.
So I guess what I should do is say what happened if we don't all already know. We're all stuck indoors and we don't have anything to do, and everybody's a writer. Hilariously, the best writer is the little girl in the corner.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say she's a little girl in the corner, but she at our advanced age, she seems like a little girl.
And she describes herself as having sat and listened to these conversations, taking it all in. So in a sense, she was the little girl in the corner.
Yeah, the only reason I didn't know what to say is I have notes on that later, because she actually says that later. Okay, so they decide that what they should do, since they're trapped indoors and they can't go and have fun on their little vacation, is everybody should write a scary story, because they'd all been reading something called
Phantasmagoria.
So I've seen it called that, but most places it's called Phantasmagoriana.
Yeah.
And I don't care very much, because it's a word that was translated from German to French, and then probably also a real word, and whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's basically it's a German collection of ghost stories
in French.
In French.
I don't know what's going on. But Mary goes on in length later about it. So they decide to do that. They're all going to write a ghost story, and Mary talks about that in this introduction. And the one note I have on here that I think is an interesting phrase, as I'm going to keep saying.
All right.
She says, poor Polidori had some terrible idea about a skull-headed lady who was so punished for peeping through a keyhole. She goes on and on about this. She does about 4 or 5 sentences about it. And what's great about it is, from reading these different annotated editions and looking it up on the internet, this description exists only in this introduction. Right. Nobody knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, well, it's very, I know, I've noted that. It's very possible it's just something he said, I'm thinking of this. Yeah. And she thought it was such a terrible idea that she fixated on it. And everybody else forgot about it.
I guess that's an interesting point. Like, that's probably true of most social events. If everybody wrote up what happened last night, you'd get 6 different
points
stories.
of view. Yeah.
And Polidori would be like, "Oh, that's right, I did say that. We were doing the morphine, or I don't know what drugs were they on?
Absinthe or whatever.
Absinthe. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah, and ironically, then the two that weren't the most famous writers are the two that actually produced something that had lasting cultural importance.
Yes.
Are you getting to that later, or
well, we can talk about that right now. Mary's book is attributed to Percy, And Polidori's book is attributed to
Attributed to
Byron. Nobody could ever even believe that this could happen.
Right.
Polidori is literally there because supposedly he's Byron's doctor.
He's Byron's quote doctor, and I think it
Is
was
like Dr. Robert?
Yeah,
the
I
Beatles
think so.
song. Is he
that? Well, that I think, he supplied the morphine or whatever, but I also think there was a little deeper relationship that neither wanted to discuss too terribly publicly. I think that's a safe bet.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this event is referenced in a great number of movies. And so I have a short list.
Do you have a short list?
I have a short list. And looking through it, I wonder if maybe you mentioned some of this when we talked about it. Because the first one on my list is called Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. Yeah, you'll remember this.
That one.
And I think it's a really good one, actually, for all its inaccuracies and weirdness of how it portrays what happened. It gets the idea across in just a few minutes.
Very succinctly, but it also, I don't think it's that weekend that they're talking, or that
it can't even be that weekend because
the book's already been written, and she only had the germ of the idea in the first couple chapters while they were at the Villa Diodati, and it wasn't till later that she fleshed it out.
Well, having said that, she also ends the story before it ends, and then she has to explain the rest of it. Yeah. So it's all scattered. I mean, it's great, and we love it.
No, it's great. Yeah, it does in a minute and a half what other feature films do over 2 hours.
Yes.
So let's hear your list.
No, the next one I want to mention is, if for no other reason than it's chronological, the deleted scene from Frankenstein: The True Story. You're aware of this, right? Because you have.
Oh yeah, because I have the. Well, that, and I also have the script.
A picture. I don't know. Wait, I gotta go back to my thing. You can see a picture of them. So
I have the published script too, which has that whole scene in it.
Oh, great! So
I would recommend you find that because it's on eBay and you don't have to pay a ton of money for it.
Okay.
It's a little paperback pocketbook.
If you don't know this, there's a magazine called Little Shop of Horrors. They do really good work.
I can't recommend that magazine enough.
And I don't know if it's always been the case, but it's certainly the case now that generally an issue is devoted to a topic, and in this case, it's one movie.
That kind of started like the 10th or 11th issue when they started to do that. And if you don't know, it's dedicated primarily to Hammer films, hence the name.
Right.
But there is an entire issue devoted to Frankenstein: The True Story, and it's worth every penny.
It really is
fabulous. Every issue I have of it, I think they're great.
Yep, I endorse your endorsement. I second your endorsement. I actually brought this with me on vacation. I made it sort of a point of bringing very little to read with me on this particular vacation so that I would actually sit and read it every day.
Yeah.
And I did. It was fascinating. I really love it. And it really made me appreciate the movie. I want to call it a movie. It was a TV movie.
It's a movie. I mean,
it's a movie.
For a TV movie, it's immensely elaborate. I mean, that scope to a TV movie in 1973 was absolutely unheard of.
Yeah. And I think it'll come up a lot while we're talking about the novel, because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't show up. It doesn't follow the novel.
Oh, not at all.
I'm not in any way trying to pretend that this is the true story. Right.
Yeah.
If you want something that attempts to follow the novel, that's probably Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
There's actually a better one.
Okay.
That the Hallmark Channel of all places did.
All right.
It's a 2-part. Who's in it? William Hurt's in it, I think.
I think we talked about that. What's it called? Just Frankenstein?
Frankenstein. It's actually really well done. You wouldn't think for a Hallmark movie but it is probably the closest to the novel that I've seen.
Okay. All right.
And there's also one that's called Terror of Frankenstein from like Sweden or Finland or something in the early 70s, right around the same time as The True Story. And I can't remember. Oh, Leon Vitali. He ended up being Stanley Kubrick's personal assistant, and he's in Barry Lyndon. He's the one who has the duel with Barry Lyndon.
Okay.
He plays Victor, and it's actually really well done.
I'm gonna
for its low budget.
You got digital copies of these, or
yeah, I've got physical copies.
VHS copies?
No, they're DVDs. So you know. Yeah.
Well, that's a digital copy.
Okay,
is that something I can buy?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, good.
I can send you the cover if you want to
Okay,
reference
yes,
them. Yeah.
please. I
Yeah.
think that would be great because if you think that it follows the novel closely, then it's something that I want to talk about when we.
They're both worth seeing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's great that Frankenstein, the true story, that they actually filmed a scene of, I don't know, what is it? I think it's just the three of them. I don't know. Byron's there for sure. Byron Shelley, everybody just calls him Shelley,
Yeah.
and Mary.
Oh, and Polidori is there. He's he's sort of sitting off to the side.
Oh,
And what they did is they had the main actors from the main film play these characters. So Leonard Whiting plays Percy. David McCallum.
yes, it's Paget is Shelley,
Nicola
and
Paget,
McCallum is Byron, and Whiting
Byron.
is Shelley.
And then
Percy Shelley.
James Mason played Polidori. And he
Which
plays
is
him,
weird
which
if you've
is weird
seen it.
because it's the character's name in the main film as well.
Yeah, so
obviously,
they invented a character.
it's
for
obviously
the
a Pretorius
more of a Pretorius.
analog.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which brings us back to the Mary Shelley's Frankenhole. So
Yeah.
there's a long history of Polidori and in all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's that one. There's also something apparently from 1986 called Gothic.
Gothic, Ken Russell. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you'd expect from a Ken Russell version of Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein.
Well, I got to see this then.
It's good. I haven't seen it probably since I saw it in the theater or on VHS. I really should track it down. Yeah, it's pretty good.
See if I can find a copy.
I'd recommend that.
Then in 1988, there's two movies that come out: Haunted Summer
Mm-hmm.
and Rowing with the Wind, which is interesting because Claire Claremont is played by Elizabeth Hurley and Lord Byron is played by Hugh Grant.
Yeah.
Those two are best known to me for Hugh Grant coming on the Tonight Show to do a sort of a public apology for getting caught with a hooker while he was dating Elizabeth Hurley many years later, I want to say.
Yeah.
But this is where they met. I don't know.
I'm not
Have you
really
seen
sure.
either one of those?
I've seen them both. Yeah.
Man.
They're interesting in their own ways. They're not, I think Gothic is better because it's a little more stylized.
Ken Russell.
It's Ken Russell. I mean,
all I really know about Ken Russell is Tommy, actually.
Tommy. You should find Lair of the White Worm.
Oh, I may have seen that actually.
It's based on Bram
I think I've seen that.
Bram Stoker's final novel, and it's pretty evident that he was in the throes of madness from the syphilis that eventually killed him. So it's worth it just for that. And it's Ken Russell, so you get all sorts of bizarre imagery.
Was he?
And Hugh Grant is in that
from,
as well.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, that's something. What an odd crossover. Okay. All right. Then I'm sure this isn't a complete list, but I did start to watch a movie from 2017 called Mary Shelley.
Oh, you left out Frankenstein Unbound.
Oh, yes. I forgot. I did actually forget to put that down. Frankenstein Unbound from 1990.
Roger Corman's final directorial film. And it has its interesting moments, but overall, it's...
So... correct me if I'm wrong. It does tell this story about the Villa Diodati, but it's also a Frankenstein movie. There's a monster in it.
Yeah, there's the monster is in it. And
does he attack them at the villa, or does he kill Percy, or probably Polidori?
What's his name? Alien with the chest bursting through.
John Hurt
plays this scientist from the future.
Leave it to you to be the first person to bring up an actor that played the Doctor on Doctor Who. John Hurt.
For fuck's sake. I had no idea.
Yeah, he did one episode, essentially.
Okay, all right.
Where he played the
but he's like this scientist from, I don't know, 2021, somewhere way in the future. And, he has this, like the DeLorean from Back to the Future. He's got this car, and he goes back to 1816 for this haunted summer or summer without whatever. And
1800 and froze to death.
Yeah, that one. And I don't care for the monster makeup at all, for one thing.
Okay.
And it's interesting, but I don't think it succeeds.
Okay.
I have not seen the 2017 Mary Shelley yet.
So I watched about the first third of it. Mary and Percy are, falling in love, and they're both beautiful people. And I just got bored and fell asleep, basically.
Did they present, because they fell in love at Mary's mother's gravesite where she would go and read and write.
So if there are glaring inaccuracies in it, I didn't see them. They go to the gravesite. That might be where they kiss, actually. But like they met in Scotland at the Baxter's house, and I don't think that happened.
I don't know that that's true.
Yeah, so I was like, well, this is dumb. And then she goes home to the Godwin home, and Percy shows up there. So it made for a good. Story wise, it was pretty good.
I'm sure they monkey around dramatically with it. Sure.
Yeah, it seemed like it was just fine. I saw that it starred Elle Fanning.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh yeah, I'm sure I know who that is. I've seen that name before. Yeah, I don't know who that is. I'm just an old guy watching newer movies.
Yeah. I don't know who these kids are.
I don't know who these kids are. They're beautiful, both of them.
Kids
They're
with
gorgeous.
their iPodcasts and their MTV music video games. And
That's right. That's the ones we're talking about. And I could not rest. I would not be able to sleep if I didn't mention 2020's Doctor Who episode, The Haunting of Villa Diodati, in which the Doctor...
You know what? I knew this was coming.
Oh, you had to know.
I know that, yeah.
The Doctor and her companions go to Villa Diodati, and they encounter the Doctor's enemies, the Cybermen, if you have any idea what I'm talking about. A very specific Cyberman. I don't want to talk about it too much. Amazingly, I
think you've already talked too much about it.
But you get the point.
I have to extend the.
When I heard that they were going to do an episode about it, I thought, I don't really want to see, someone try to explain how the idea came into Mary's head with some goofy. And it's fine. It's not bad. It's not a bad episode, but didn't stick with me like you might think from a guy who does a Frankenstein podcast where he can't shut up about Doctor Who. But
it doesn't posit that Doctor Who inspired Mary to write the book or anything like that, does it?
I don't remember specifically, but I would assume it does.
Oh, that's awful.
So when Tom Baker, he would just say it, right? Like he picks up a copy of Hamlet where he says, "To be or not to be, 'tis better to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune," or whatever. And he says, "Oh, he left that in there. I told him to change that." Basically, he's always doing that as a character throughout.
Well, see, that's kind of funny because
when it's just a momentary
offhand,
yeah.
But to base an entire episode around, "Hey, Mary, here's a great idea for your." Come here.
The only thing I would say
having
is
trouble writing this. I got an idea for you.
It's only slightly better than that. It's more like, hey, let's go to this great historical moment. And then when they get there, oh, oops, the Cybermen are there. And he kind of looks like a big monster. And, we accidentally inspired Mary to,
No.
I think I've covered all the big heavy hitters. One of the things I do want to mention when we're doing this chapter by chapter, that's one of the things I've thought is we could call it Frankenstein chapter.
I got to make a whole new logo and everything. 10 minutes on it.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is what was this like in the movies? And in particular, I want to talk about the ones that I love, the Universal film series. Yeah. So hopefully that'll come up most often. And we've already got one, which is great, right in the introduction.
It's certainly the most culturally impactful of any. You say Frankenstein, and this is what people picture Boris Karloff.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think that's a safe bet that, those films will come up again and again and again, even though by the time of Son of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley had absolutely nothing to do with it anymore.
Well, it's interesting, too, that we're talking about it now. Like I said, I wish I would have read it sooner just to be able to talk about it more in previous podcasts. And while I was reading it, quite often I would think about how funny it would be to have this character be the character that we got in the films. And like you said, by the time we get to Son of Frankenstein, that's all out the window. But, Clerval, I call him Clerval. I don't know if it's Clerval. Henry. Yeah, there you go. Henry.
Yeah, Henry.
Henry in the book, as people will know, is Victor in the movie. And vice versa. So it's funny to think of him as Bowles. And I assume that'll come up as we go through this. So there you go. There's your selling point to get a Patreon, to sign up for Patreon, just to hear us talking about Bowles.
John Bowles as Henry Clerval. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
He's portrayed by David McCallum in The True Story, right? Clerval. Yeah. And in that version,
I don't know why I can't picture him.
in that version.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Well, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
He's
McCallum.
David McCallum,
So are you talking about the guy that's the
the man from
torture?
Uncle. Yeah, the drunken. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not who's in this book at all.
No. I'm just saying. Had you let me finish my thought,
okay.
that I was going to say that. Yeah, he bears very little resemblance to the character from the novel, and he is the one in the true story that is already working on the experiment when Victor Frankenstein meets him. It's an interesting take on it.
Which is really reminiscent of Bowles' character, who was trying to skis on
On his fiance,
on Henry Frankenstein's babe.
Yeah, macking
So,
on her. Yeah.
I said skis, which is I think was an important word from 1986 until later in 1986, and so I went with
It
babe.
must have been a local colloquialism because
You've never heard skis?
No.
I'm probably using it wrong. I probably first heard it near a pinball machine in '86.
Yeah.
Quit skeezing on my babe.
It wasn't in like Fast Times at Ridgemont High or anything.
There you
like
go.
that.
Do you see that's going to come out in
Let's
the
come out
Criterion edition?
Yeah. I
That's,
might have to spring for that.
I mean, the scene where
just
she comes
so-
out of the pool, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, it's
yeah.
just amazing to think this is becoming a Criterion
I know.
event.
Yeah. Well, they already did Dazed and Confused, so
Well, I suppose that's true. It was only
although
a matter of time.
that's a better film, but
And I think they did Breakfast Club, didn't they?
they did. Yeah. That I don't need to revisit that.
I really liked Breakfast Club. I always forget we're about the same age, but when we were teenagers, we weren't the same age.
Weren't
so
the same age
sometimes
at all.
yeah, Breakfast
Yeah.
Club, I was just the right age for that.
Yeah, I think I was in college, so I was a little bit old.
Yeah,
And I liked it enough at the time,
yeah.
but I watched
that
it
didn't.
again.
Some
did
parts
not
really
age.
have not aged well. Yeah.
No, they
And it's really
haven't.
unfortunate because John Hughes, if you could just take out 15% of John Hughes's work, out of here and there, he was.
Well,
a
I
genius.
would say if you go to 16 Candles, you could probably take out about 70% of it
That's a good point.
because that really hasn't aged well.
I bet it isn't 70, but I bet it's high.
Long Duck Dong. That's all
Yeah,
I'm going to
that
say.
character has to be completely eliminated. no
Completely
doubt.
eliminated, and the whole plot is basically
Yeah,
it's I can't.
yeah.
watch
There's
it.
a lot that hasn't aged well.
No,
I don't
I
have
can't.
daughters like you do, so maybe I forget how bad it is.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
go that journey.
All right. Well, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is
You know what?
100% great.
I need to watch that again because I must have been in a really foul mood when I went to see it because I didn't enjoy it at all. And I love Steve
well.
Martin. I
Oh,
love
my
Steve
God.
Martin, so I need to. And everybody tells me I'm wrong. So
You're wrong.
I'm pretty sure I am because I'm a majority
I'll send you
of
the
one.
extended edition where they cut in all the deleted.
Okay.
I don't
Well, actually,
know.
I'll.
Exist.
But
yeah.
I'll give it another shot because I must have just been extraordinarily crappy at it.
Could be.
And I
I
like John
don't-
Candy in supporting roles. But
Oh,
Steve Martin
there you go.
Steve Martin at the time was he and Bill Murray were
Height of their
you know,
power.
on.